So I would just like to welcome everybody to Integrating Universal Design for Learning and Restorative Practices into PBIS to improve access for all learners. This is session number 2, and we are very excited that you have joined us for this session. And we're just looking forward to hanging out with you for a little bit this afternoon. So my name is Jennifer Bedker. I am a program specialist with the Open Access Project based out of the Placer County SELPA.
Hi, everyone. Patty Shetter. I'm a program coordinator for integrated PBIS at Placer County Office of Education.
And hi, everyone. I'm Marcy Zapeno. I'm program manager for Prevention and Intervention Services up north at Humboldt County Office of Education.
So last session, we did some foundational work, kind of activating that background knowledge around Universal Design for Learning, PBIS, and restorative practices. In session 2 today, we're going to start applying our knowledge of Universal Design for Learning and restorative practices when we're creating and teaching those school-wide expectations and the routines. So a few norms just for today. Commit to staying present, be as present as you possibly can, also knowing that it's a Monday and it's 3 o'clock and there's lots of things happening. So just try as best as you can, understanding that, you may have to take a phone call or step away for a minute. Always ask questions. Do not be afraid to interrupt us and ask questions to help move your learning forward. Try to share something and take something new away. And then, of course, mind your video and your sounds. Just making sure that, we're aware of things happening. So again, I get it. If you're home and a kid is asking you a question, you may want to mute for a hot minute, but that's what we want to do. All right. So for our grounding activity, I want you to think about wishes. And if you were to be granted one wish, what would it be? So on the home-based document, there is a spot for you to put down what is your one wish. What do you think that would be? Could be personal, it could be professional. Doesn't matter. You share about you. Or if you would like to put it in a chat, feel free to just share it in the chat.
And I can tell you some of the things that are popping up. Travel to another country. Ooh, me too. Time to travel. Everyone's getting the travel bug. I think it must be the time of year. That people would listen to each other and learn to get along. Is today World Kindness Day? I think it might be. That's a good wish.
It might be too.
Health for family. Every day should be, I agree, every day should be World Kindness Day. Lots of wishes for health.
Right, this is the month of gratitude too, so I appreciate those comments too of just, wishing for time and we're very grateful that you are here today to share in this learning with us and to really collaborate with us on really providing access for our students, because they are the reason that we are all in this room together. So our big picture objective is really looking at that UDL lens and our restorative practices lens in the creation and the teaching of the school-wide expectations that are part of the PBIS Tier 1 implementation. So again, on the home-based document or in the chat, I want you to write down what is a personal goal for your learning that you have today. So think about, what do you hope to get out of this? What is a goal that you are going to set today for yourself?
And some people are putting into the chat, so thank you. Denise, advance my understanding of the combination of UDL, PBIS, and restorative practices. to be open to opportunities for new ideas and to learn something new and apply it in my classroom. So thank you for those.
We've got a few on the home-based document about refreshing my knowledge of restorative practices, refreshing my knowledge of UDL, incorporating the knowledge into PBIS, and lots of, it looks like, hopes for little nuggets to be able to take back.
We hope we provide you with some little nuggets to take back for sure. All right, thank you so much for sharing that. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to kind of go back, activate again. What did we cover last time? Just so that you can start again activating your brain and kind of thinking about how would this apply to our PBIS Tier 1. So last time when we talked about UDL, we talked about two ideas, this idea of variability and this idea of barriers. And so the variability that we talk about is all the greatness that is in our classrooms, that are in our staff meetings, that are in our trainings. We are all so different in the way that we perceive things and the way that we understand them and the way that we engage with new learning. And so it's really important that we keep in mind that variability, because we're going to have a wide gamut of variability in any situation that we're in. So how do we make sure that we can kind of anticipate and embrace that variability and see it as strengths with more of that asset-based lens instead of that deficit-based lens? And then with the idea of barriers, we always try to minimize barriers. So we know that within learning, there are spots that we get stuck. Right? But as adults, we understand this is what I need to do to kind of minimize that barrier for myself. A lot of times our students don't know how to do that, right? They're still learning about themselves and kind of what they feel that they're good at and what they feel like they're maybe not so good at. So really UDL asks us to be proactive in our planning so that we can ensure that those barriers are minimized so that it doesn't lead to frustration, which then leads to disengagement and sometimes shutdown. So those were the two areas of universal design for learning.
And we're applying universal design for learning to our PBIS. Which, as you guys know, is a multi-tiered system framework where we use data in order to determine what students need and in order to determine if the practices that we're using are having the desired effect. And we put in place systems to be able to support the adults in the learning environment to be able to use the practices and the data in order to support students. The emphasis of this series of webinars is really focused on that universal or primary tier of PBIS, Tier 1. And today we're going to delve into how to apply universal design for learning, as well as some of the restorative practices for getting some of those systems in place, particularly emphasizing and focusing on the commitments of the staff and the students on a campus to implement all of the components of PBIS Tier 1. And we're going to focus on how to apply universal design for learning and restorative practices, specifically to the positive expectations in the school-wide matrix and how to create those, as well as how to teach those.
Okay, and if you were here the last time I did an overview, a little bit of restorative practices. Would anyone, so I just want to touch on a few of these components, but anyone mind reading this slide so we have other voices in the room? You can go ahead and just unmute.
Restorative practices are a framework for building community and for responding to challenging behavior through authentic dialogue, coming to understanding, and making things right.
Great. Thanks, Kirsten. One thing when people were putting in the chat for the wish, and I wrote down that everyone should get along. Some other people wrote listen to each other and learn to get along. This is really the essence of restorative practices, building community, building that relationship. And so our purpose for today is really looking at how can we take restorative practices to enhance both PBIS and UDL. So this fundamental hypothesis of restorative practices that human beings are happier, more productive, and more likely to make positive changes in their behavior when those in positions of authority do things with them rather than to them or for them. So for this fundamental hypothesis, and it's looking at how we as adults, how are we projecting out? And again, how do we project out with the aim to be more doing things with people rather than what would be considered more punitive to people or that permissive for people. And we'll go over in the next slide, the social discipline window briefly. If you want, there we go. So in this one, I talked about last time, but on the axes, on the left-hand side is control. And that's those expectations, limit setting, discipline, and in the bottom is the support, and that all goes low to high. And so when we're thinking about that control and we're looking at it in the view of lens of PBIS, you also can be thinking about your consequences, your rules, your expectations, that accountability, those expectations that we want for all our students and for adults and the staff. So if we're within this window, if we are looking at the top left box and we're very high in control, but very low in support, again, that's considered the to box, doing things to people. And then if we're down in the bottom box, the bottom right corner, that's high in support, but low in control, that's considered doing things for people, being permissive. And then if you're low in control and low in support, then that's considered in this social discipline window, you're doing things you're not, it's that neglectful. And what the aim is that we work together to do things with people. So you want high control and we want high support. So the other cornerstone, another cornerstone piece to restorative practices is fair process. It's also considered called the 3 E's, and that's engagement, explanation, and expectation clarity. And so that engagement piece is you really want to be involving people in the decisions that affect them, listening to their point of view, taking their opinions into account. Explanation is really explaining the reasons behind why a decision is being made and involving all people in that. And then expectation clarity is making sure that everyone clearly understands what's expected to them. One thing that sometimes for me, I like to kind of illustrate it with an example. And so I always start with, like, if anyone wants to put in the chat or just unmute, like, what is a super popular game at recess? Like, what is something that the kids are just like, wow, it's the big hype. They love to do it at recess. Let me see if I got anyone.
Wall
ball and Foursquare. Okay, similar. So I'm just going to use wall ball for an example. Okay, for fair process. So wall ball is like, there's a huge problem with wall ball because the kids love it, but the balls keep going over the fence. They're going in the street. The kids trying to climb the fence to get the ball. It's a safety issue. So I could say expectation clarity, could use that. If I just use expectation clarity and I said no more wall ball, what is the reaction that I'm going to have? Right? It's say it's at the group of third graders, third, fourth graders, they're not going to be happy. Right? If I just say no more wall ball. Now I could explain. So let's do the other piece. If I said, okay, well, there's a concern because it's a safety issue the ball's going over the fence. You know, some students have almost gotten hit. We're trying to go retrieve the ball, so we're not going to be able to play wall ball anymore. Okay, there might be a little bit more understanding, but still can that resistance to, you know. But if I was to get, say, this group of 3rd and 4th graders together and engage them and say, here's the concern, right? Here's the problem that we're having. What do you think? Right? And just to point out, the fair process is not seeking to end in a democracy. It can, right? But it's the point is for all voices to be heard, right? So that we involve everyone in that process of decisions that's going to affect them. So maybe they come up with some other ideas and we'd be able to come up with another solution, but by them having a voice, and then it still may result in no more wall ball, with the central idea that individuals are most likely to trust and cooperate freely with systems. So whether they themselves win or lose by those systems when fair process is observed. So if we can substitute that. So if students are most likely to trust and cooperate freely with teachers, right? If they're feeling like they had that voice, right? They were engaged within that process. Teachers, you could substitute teachers with admin, parents, you know, with the school community, right? So when we're thinking about fair process and we're talking about school-wide expectations today and connecting that with PBIS, thinking about how are we engaging students, staff, our classified staff, you know, everyone that's a part of our school community when we're creating these school-wide expectations. So I want you to carry this idea of fair process as we move through this today, and also be thinking about that, as Jen had mentioned, about removing barriers and minimizing threats and distractions. How can we use fair process to help to eliminate some of these barriers as well? So what we want to do is move into a breakout room. And again, I reviewed the social discipline window and fair process. And how does the social discipline window of trying to really strive to be within the with box, knowing that also, I said this last time, but I want to reiterate this time with the social discipline window, there are times that, you know, it's appropriate to be within the 2 box, right? If there's a fire drill, I'm not going to have everyone circle up and talk about how they feel to you know, but to give yourself grace too, like if I start my day and I'm having a rough day and I know that I'm in the 2 box, that I'm moving from really being intentional of trying to shift within the with. So how could we use that social discipline window of trying to be within that with box and fair process to guide how the tier 1 PBIS is rolled out and refined at your sites? Right. And we want to be thinking both about students and staff. And then there's a place in the home document that you can share your thoughts as you're in your group. So are there any questions, clarifications before we move into the breakout? All right, welcome back, everyone. All right, so we just want to spend a little bit of time just checking in with the groups to see if there's anything you want to share out with the whole group. And so is there anyone, I'm just going to kind of go by starting with room 5, which was Denise, Lon, sorry if I say Larry and Leonard. Would anyone from that group want to share any highlights that you discussed?
Am I unmuted?
Yes.
Okay. We put that in the, I tried to capture it. A lot of people were on their cell phones doing many different things. So I was trying to capture it in the notes of the breakout room. So we put knowing the how and the why, the expectation, clarity, and explanation are important, as is keeping the fidelity of the initial understanding. So kind of that, we've been doing it so well for so long, but now we've kind of gotten away from that initial fidelity, getting back there. And then also we discussed involving students in understanding the why of their learning is critical. And we discussed giving the opportunity for student voice to be heard encourages engagement.
Great. Thank you so much, Denise in Group 5. And I think that also extends to when we think about when we train, typically how we will train the PBIS team, right? And they go back and teach the staff. And that's extending it as well. Like, how are we encouraging that engagement with staff and getting that voice for everybody to be involved, and along with students, such an important component, right? Thank you. And what about room 4? Anyone from, it was Bill, Eileen, Aaron, Marcella. Anyone from your group like to share?
I'll go ahead and just kind of piggyback off on something Denise said. We talked about that initial buy-in being so crucial, that voice of all different groups, right? Students, staff, et cetera. But then we also talked about kind of what Denise was saying about the fidelity is maintaining that buy-in by being consistent and in all your practices. Because if you start to get a team starts to get a little lax in some of their practices, you can very quickly lose buy-in from particularly staff. But then we were also talking about especially secondary students also. If they think things are going to be inconsistent or unfair, they're not
Absolutely.
going to continue to buy in.
Mm-hmm. And one way too, we use the TFI for that fidelity by taking the TFI and the TFI 3.0, which is coming, that we'll all be using sometime in the near future. That really, there's a lot of added components to it. That's really those important pieces. And one of those is, how are we involving? What is that engagement? How are we engaging students, staff, families, our community? So we're getting ahead of it. No. All right. Okay, and thank you, Eileen. So room 3 had Justin, Kirsten, Megan, and Melanie. Does anyone from that group want to share anything that you discussed?
One of us, we were talking, one of them's driving, so I don't want them to have to worry about trying to do 2 things at once.
Yeah.
We talked about the importance of the fact that students should be part of the process, that we're doing school with our youth, not, to our youth. And that, some of them are the greatest problem solvers on our campus when we think about things, because they live in it every single day. I mean, we do as adults, but and then we talked about a unique experience that one of my colleagues in the group talked about, the inference ladder, and how there was a situation on campus with a text feed that, not on campus, but outside of campus, but feelings were hurt and people were harmed, and how the students ran with that and led that work, and how that was really organic and helpful. So when it comes back to implementing Tier 1, PBIS is the fact that it should not be the adults on the campus facilitating those matrices. It really should be in partnership, as you said, Marcy, with community and the students. We even had our kindergartners create the matrix for their playground, because they live it and they play on it and they can solve problems and they see things that at different levels. I mean, one of them was talking about the ice cream thing, or the little stand where they pass things through and what the rules for me there. Well, I would have never thought to think about that, but here are these 5-year-olds that can solve problems in ways that we can't. So I think my 2 cents is that we don't give our kids enough credit for how much of the process they can be, especially since they outnumber us significantly on a campus, but they can bring so much insight too.
Thank you so much. Yes. And it's not just that you said, Kirsten, not only do you get buy-in when you bring in student voice, but you are developing in that restorative way, right? Building that community. And then when you have that sense of community, that sense of belonging, then when things happen where there's maybe harm caused, you're able to bring in a circle and repair that harm, because there is that sense of safety and trust. Great, thank you. All right, how about room 2? David, Melissa, Mrs. Kendrick, is it Nikia?
Hi, this is Melissa. We just talked about how important it was to keep going back to that why and building those foundational pieces and making sure everyone had that commitment prior to just trying to move forward without everyone being on the same page.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yes, thank you. Okay, and then it looked like Jennifer, Kim, Megan.
We really just focused on ways in high school, and we kind of stuck right to UDL and just UDL strategies specifically that we're using. We did not so much talk about the exact question that was being targeted.
Well, wonderful. Love the tie-in with UDL, because that's what we're trying to embed, all these components with restorative UDL and within PBIS. So thank you. All right, thank you, everyone.
All right, so with your school-wide expectations, the general guidelines for developing them is that you create 3 to 5 that are broad enough to really cover not just behavioral goals, but also academic and social emotional learning. That they should be stated in a positive way. So they don't say no running. They should say something like use walking feet, or as you'll see in some of the later slides, even more inclusive ways of wording that is maybe use a safe pace in the hallway. And they should be brief and easy to remember, and sometimes using a catchy personal phrase related to the school mascot or school song or something like that can really create a sense of buy-in. Once the expectations are identified, and hopefully you're doing that by involving your staff and your students and getting their commitment and buy-in because of the co-creation, then the posters are created to be able to provide a visual element in all of the necessary areas where there may need to be reminders of the expectations. And the expectations in each area are clarified for the students, so made specific to that particular context or area. So your expectations for being respectful in the hallway might look a little bit different than being respectful in the cafeteria. And getting staff and student participation in creating those and clarifying those is really important. But one other element, and Jen, I think there's 3 little animations to click here. In order to make these inclusive is really thinking about the wording of those core expectations in phrasing them in a way that involves we. So we are respectful, we solve problems, we make good decisions. Really communicates that it is everyone in the community, that it is inclusive, and that it does really involve all voices and all people on a campus.
Well, I was going to add too that why is so key in universal design for learning too, because when people understand a purpose, it is easier for them to feel that they have a voice, for them to engage in the process, for them to feel a part of a community. And all of these things that I just mentioned are key in universal design for learning too, because we want to establish students who feel part of the community and that their voices are heard. Same with our staff. It's true of adults too. We talk about students, but adults are geared that way too. I want to have a voice. I want to feel confident in my abilities. I want to feel that I'm valued.
So Jen's going to move into then thinking about the design of your posters and the design of your rubrics and your expectations for those specific context areas, and how to apply universal design to the design of that aspect of Tier 1.
Thank you, Patty. And so as we think about that, we want to think about some of the barriers that we find within the school-wide expectations and the teaching of them. So again, we go back to that idea of how will they engage in this process? Why? That's kind of that why of learning. And so again, if they don't have a voice in it and they don't feel that they were part of the decision-making of this, they're really going to have a hard time engaging and really understanding and respecting these expectations that were developed. And so when we want them to engage in this process, and when we want them to engage within our lessons, we really need to think about how are we doing that? So are we giving them a chance to talk about it in groups, in smaller groups? Are we giving them some ideas of how are we going to collaborate? You know, we're giving you breakout room times. We're giving you that home-based document. We're kind of giving you what hopefully you need in this session to really engage in this learning. And then when we think about that what of learning or that representation, we really think about how are we going to, you know, provide the information so that they can take it in. Because we know sometimes that just having them read it may not work for everybody. So can we provide like a video option, some video modeling of the expectation? Do we have maybe visuals that go along with those expectations just in case they struggle a little bit, or, you know, this is not their home language? And then really, are we giving them opportunities to kind of independently explore some of this information? And then the last part that we think about is, how are we going to know that they understand the expectations? So that idea of how are we going to know what they know? And so do we see them applying it? Have we given them an opportunity to show us what they know? So some may be able to tell us, this is the rule, this is what it means. Maybe some students want to draw it. Maybe some students want to act it out, put on a little skit or create a video that relates to that. So really, when we're thinking about how we're teaching these and how we're developing these, we have to think about where are there some barriers within that. And if all voices aren't heard, that might be a barrier, right? If we're presenting the information only in one way, that might be a barrier. If us understanding what they know is having them write a paragraph, that might be a barrier for some of our students. So these are some of the things that we want to keep in mind as we're developing this part. So on this slide, you can see this is one example from the Battle Monument, where it says Battle Monument kids will be safe. What you'll notice on here is they use that catchy thing, but what they also did was, and I apologize, it's a little blurry, but they put in little visuals. So what does it mean to have a safe body? So they put a student sitting in a chair, right? That's a safe body. That's that visual cue that helps a wide variety of students, right? So if we're really making it accessible for all of our students, having those visual prompts are going to help a lot of people, because if they just see that picture, that will trigger them without having to read the words. Or maybe they do want to read the words. Great. So this is one example of different ways to add a visual. This next example kind of takes it to that next level. So not only did they start with, we are responsible, we are very inclusive of everybody, they've added that picture, again, that visual to help them. And then what you'll also notice are these little QR codes. And so what they did was they put the QR codes on there so students whose first language is not English can take a picture of that QR code and it pops up in the home language. So they took it to that next level and even, you know, added it so Spanish is widely spoken at this campus. And so those QR codes link to the Spanish version of the expectations. This is another one that has them side by side. So not only do you have the pictures, You have one side in English and the other side in Spanish, which again, same pictures, but it's in that home language. So how are we helping everybody have access? Because we also know sometimes barriers are, we don't understand, because it's not necessarily available to us in a way that works for us. So another area that we wanted you guys to think about is within our expectations, if we added a column to say, we are inclusive, we are responsible, we are respectful. But what happens if we write one that says we are inclusive? What would that look like on our campus? So for example, we put an example of we are inclusive for the cafeteria. And in there, we ask our friends to join our table. That's what inclusive in the cafeteria may look like. And so our idea is for you to really go into breakout rooms and complete this chart in the breakout rooms. We put the chart on the home-based document, so you'll be able to kind of type in ideas. And I think this helps us collaborate too, because we may have a really good idea for playground and then someone else adds one into that home-based document. And we're like, oh, that's a good one too, right? So it really gives us this opportunity to really think about what are different examples of what inclusivity looks like on the playground if we are inclusive. So we want you to look at that in the breakout rooms. And then what we also want you to think about is how could we apply this UDL to our behavioral expectations? So after you've added into that chart, I want you to think about these questions. And these are also on the home-based document. So I want you to think about, how do your expectations address the learner variability, right? So we asked you to bring an example of your expectations that you have on your site right now. And then what barriers could you possibly see within those expectations within teaching that lesson? And how will the entire school community really engage with that? Okay, so it's kind of two-pronged. Write down some ideas of what it would look like if we had a we are inclusive. And then think about those questions about how are we addressing the variability? How are we minimizing those barriers within our teaching and our development of the expectations? So any questions on that? All right, excellent. So we are going to put you back into breakout rooms. We have had a couple people drop, so we're gonna try it again, and hopefully we'll get some people to be in there. We have, I think I'm gonna do 4 breakout rooms. I think that will work. Okay, so here we go. We're going to give you another 10 minutes for this. Welcome back, everyone. Would anybody like to share out something that they talked about or some example from the We Are Inclusive that they would like to share?
Hi, sorry.
No, go ahead, Leonard.
Okay. So yeah, our group really focused on the inclusivity part. So, you know, we have in a lot of our schools, we have predominantly Spanish speaking students. And you know, in our district in particular, I have not seen any expectations or any posters or anything that is done in Spanish. And then, you know, along those same lines, you know, we have some TKers and kindergartners, or even individuals that might have some special needs that that can't read. And so, like, you know, having some pictures in those expectations, you know, if we demonstrate folded and safe hands, then, you know, have a picture of someone there with safe hands. We also talked about, you know, beyond language and ability, just including all of our students. So like the LGBTQ community, how can we engage them and include them in these expectations as well? So I think our group just really focused on how we're going to take this information and be more inclusive.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. Anyone else like to share?
I think Megan might have unmuted. Go ahead, Megan.
Yeah, I was the one who unmuted at the same time as Leonard, but it also happened that we were in the same group. So he basically talked about the same thing. What I did find really interesting is just just thinking about it from a different perspective. I'm at the high school level. And so then to be reminded of like, oh, what about the things for younger kids? And I'm like, oh yeah. And so I had to kind of think about it from a much more diverse range. So to just have that feedback from each level was really insightful, I thought. And then everything else he said.
Great. Great. I think it's interesting too, because when we think about, being inclusive and we think about all of our voices too, that culture piece really plays in also, because we have to think that, the way that you are raised and your background and kind of that culture that we live in also will play a huge part in how we understand these expectations, right? Because in my culture, we're very loud and boisterous people, and everybody in the family is loud. So like when you're saying use a quiet voice, my quiet voice is not going to look like Patty's quiet voice, because we're naturally loud. So if I'm just using this kind of voice, this is my quiet voice, which for some people isn't very quiet. So it really does kind of depend on, that part of it too should be taken into consideration. So thank you so much for sharing, and I'm going to pass it on to Patty.
All right, so you guys gave some time and some consideration to how to include multiple perspectives in the development of expectations and how important that is. You gave some time and had some conversations around how to present the information in ways that's more accessible to students and engaging to students. We want to shift now this last little portion to thinking about how we teach expectations and what are some different ways to be able to teach the expectations that engage learners, that helps them to be able to understand the information and also demonstrate that they know the information. So we have a really wonderful example here, and we included this because one of the things with Universal Design for Learning that can be incredibly helpful is designing for the edges. And what that kind of represents or means is that we have a range of abilities and a range of different learners with different strengths and needs. And if we could design for the students that are on the edges of that variability, then we can encompass most of all the learners. So this example that you're going to see here is a video lesson plan that was designed for students at Battle Monument School. This school is a school for students who have more extensive support needs. So it might be equated in our community to a non-public school for students with extensive support needs. So we're going to show this video and be thinking about all of the ways in which in the design of this video lesson plan, they've thought about engagement, they've thought about students taking in the information and also demonstrating what they know.
safe body at the nurses or in the cafeteria. I respect your space, I will not take your chicken nuggets or pizza. I can have a safe body on the playground, I can be safe when I'm outside, and I can sure learn how to wait my turn on the swing and on the slide. We can dance, everybody's in control. 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 It's safe to dance, well it's safe to dance, it's safe to dance. We're safe if we want to, we can keep safe friends in mind. Cause we need safe hands and we need safe feet to have a safe body like mine. We can take deep breaths if we want to, a calm body you will find. We come from a school where safety is cool, where happy stays behind. We can dance, everybody's in control. 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 It's safe to dance, well it's safe to dance. Yes, it's safe to dance, well it's safe to dance. Yes, it's safe to dance, well it's safe to dance. Everyone find that.
All right. So what were some things that that you thought about in terms of universal design with the video? What are some ways that that video engage students, help them to be able to learn the rules, and help them to be able to demonstrate what they know? Jen, our UDL expert, what were some things that from that paradigm you saw?
So obviously very engaging because those of you with the camera on, I saw some little head nods and some things going. So definitely music is a way to engage students. And I'm sorry the closed captions didn't pick up the words exactly, but just an engaging tune that gets them moving. Movement is another great example of how we can engage our students. Having it modeled for them. So we think about the modeling, how they're taking in that information is they're seeing it and they're hearing it through the song. And then for them to be able to dance and show that they understand what safe hands and safe feet mean through a dance really does show that, gives them that opportunity to output that information and demonstrate what they know. That video just makes my heart warm every time I see it.
I've seen several from different parts of the country, some of them done in with a lot of cultural responsiveness. You know, I saw one where there was a rap competition and the different students got to make up different lyrics that went with different expectations in different contexts, and high school, super engaging. And really spoke to their love of you know, culture and spoken language, and super engaging. So it doesn't have to just be thinking about students with disabilities. Those videos and the music and the engagement around teaching of the expectations can look a lot of different ways depending on your population.
And Patty, can I just add too, does that tie in with the video? And when you think about the social discipline window, right, with the adults and the students, I was doing things with them, right? That was very high support, very high control. And then fair process, right? There was a lot of engagement along with UDL, that engagement piece with the students, but that expectation and the expectation clarity is still there, right? That they you know, they were able to engage in the process, be a part of that, and being able to follow what those expectations are. That's that clarity piece. So.
Okay, then the next strategy that we wanted to highlight for you in terms of teaching expectations is the use of something called a social narrative or a social story. It's a story written in a very specific way that incorporates something that the students are interested in or passionate about. And in the example you see here, it takes a character from a movie that was really popular that many of the students were really into and applies that character to the expectations and what's expected of them. You see lots of visual elements here. You see the engagement because of the character and something that they're passionate and interested in. There's written word for students who may be readers. But it's another strategy to be able to kind of really encompass that that engagement and multiple means of representation.
And storytelling, we know, is a huge part of many cultures. And so being able to tell that story really will resonate and really engage a lot of our students.
And then one final example, what you see here is the expectations. We are safe, we are respectful, we are responsible. Some awesome added elements of visual support. But I want you to pay particular attention to we are safe. And it says students should walk or roll slowly. And it has represented there an ambulatory student and a non-ambulatory student. Thinking about sometimes how the language and the expectations can really be exclusive of certain groups. And in this example, they really thought about the student population and how to make those expectations super inclusive, not just in the way that they worded it, but in the visuals that they used to be able to support. The other thing that I really appreciate about this set of expectations is that they thought really clearly about the staff expectations and have that mapped out here as well. What should staff be doing in order to be supportive of the students during each of these activities and routines?
So with this one too, we kind of did want to talk about expressing that understanding, right? So Patty really kind of talked to us about that why and how they're taking in that information. But the other part is, again, how do we know what they know? How can they show us and demonstrate the understanding? Well, for some students who need a device to communicate, right, we need to make sure that they are able to, and they have the right tools that will allow them to express their understanding in a way that they communicate, because some of our students are nonverbal. But we also think about role playing, right? Not only did, Battle Monument have that cute little dance, a lot of kids like to act things out. So how can they act those things out? Or for others, maybe it's if we're going to be responsible, what does that look like in a picture? And so you can see that they drew a little girl and with the curly hair, and it says, what does responsible mean? It means I can, it means I'll take my seat, it means I'm thinking about my choices, all that lead back to that expectation. So again, as Patty said, when UDL asks us to teach to the edges, we really need to see where our edges are. We will have some students that communicate differently. We will have some students that prefer movement. Are we allowing those options in there to really ensure that they can demonstrate understanding? So the last piece that we asked you to do was we asked you to bring in a lesson plan that you have used as you are teaching the expectations. And so I really want you to ask yourself those 3 questions. How will we engage? How will the learners take in information? And how will the learners express understanding? And so as you do that and you answer those questions, what is one thing, that +1? I love the +1. What is one thing that you could add to your lesson plan that will make it more accessible for our students or our staff or our community? Okay, so we're going to give you about 7 minutes in the breakout rooms. I think we're going to be down to about 2 breakout rooms each now. And then when we come back, we'll debrief I'll ask you guys to take a survey and then we'll talk about our third session. Okay, so about 7 minutes, I'll throw you into a breakout room and we're just going to do 2. Thank you to those who are sticking around. We really appreciate it. And here you go. So would anybody like to share any ideas that they had? Or thoughts or aha moments?
Well, I'll speak up. I was, again, being the secretary of our group, and and they people brought in the ideas of course, the visuals. Duh, why wasn't I thinking of that before? And also to create a video of shoulds and should nots. They felt that for their population, they might act out the should nots, but then it would demonstrate that they know what they should do as well. And someone else said that they wanted to create a tableau of the expectations. Apparently their school is doing heavily into tableaus this year. And then we also discussed a little bit about respect agreements. And I think Maricela was talking a little bit about that.
Nice, nice. So the person that suggested tableaus, is there an online place that you're going to create those, or did they say anything?
Well, no, so what we're doing is we're part of a program in Humboldt County that's called Art Cell. They're currently working on, and then this year is focused on tableaus. So they're student created tableaus that they do in the moment. They get sort of organized into random groups, and then they decide what would best represent it. And then so there's room to play around with each group does a different expectation, or everybody represents, respect at one time. And then there's a great discussion about that afterwards, why we chose these things. And I love also, because it has sort of a systematic approach to it. There's this we wait until everybody has an idea, everybody shares their idea, we build on what feels strongest. So it's the discussion and the group work is really just, the collaboration is just as significant as whatever the final product is. But we've been sort of sharing them as a school and showing each other our, so it just creates a great school-wide discussion.
Oh, I love that. Thank you for sharing.
Of course.
That's fantastic. And on January 22nd, we'll learn again about applying our UDL lens and our restorative practice lens to that acknowledgement system, right? So we're going to look at how can we apply that to the system that has the highest probability of increasing or encouraging that positive behavior for all of our learners.
Thank you so much, everyone.